Hi, this is a foreigner in the Philippines. Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about is something that keeps cropping up, and that is about our expectations of what other people should be doing and whether they align with what we have come to believe about life in general. And in the Philippines at least, one of the most commonly talked about things is the fact that an older man can come over here and marry a younger woman. Now, this is not peculiar, it's not specific, it's not something that applies only in the Philippines, because if a man is fairly well off in the West, he will be able and probably will find a younger woman if he divorces from his long-time wife. And that will be a whole other video talking about the rights and the wrongs of that. I mean, there are instances where once a woman becomes better off, she gets rid of the guy that she had, and vice versa. Now, I always hear the most common one is the doctor. The doctor does his training and he's supported by a hard-working wife, and then when he makes it, she's gone, and the pretty young receptionist that used to handle his calls becomes his wife. Well, that's a whole other thing. Coming out here to the Philippines, this is what I really wanted to focus on, was that mechanism of, we can call it jealousy, that mechanism of expecting that someone else will behave in a particular way which suits your own set of values and expectations. And very often, if you are in a relationship which you are not happy with and can't get out of, you will be jealous of people who have made the break and have left a damaging spiritual dead end of a relationship and have gone somewhere else. And this is perhaps even that is a whole other video to discuss. Like, why does a woman who is abused and battered by some violent drinker of a man, or somebody who uses drugs and has his mind altered every time he sniffs something up his nose, and then beats her wife, why doesn't she leave? Well, there are all kinds of reasons why people stay together. Now, when a man comes out to the Philippines who is in his retirement age, and he is able to support himself in a fairly comfortable style, which most expats, when they come out here, even on a very modest income, like myself, can support themselves, and they don't have to work, and the woman that they finally choose, who chooses to live with them, can live in a style that is at least secure. So what we're looking at is not why the man chooses to have a younger woman, because that to me seems fairly obvious. Men seem to have a higher sex drive than women, especially when they start to get older. And so the woman that they're with may not fulfill those needs. We're not talking about right and wrong. We're only talking about what is, the isness of it. Right? So whatever the need is that he finds can be fulfilled by a younger woman, and let's face it, there are enough sex tourists and sexpats here in the Philippines who that's all that they're interested in. Well, we're not really looking at those. We're looking at people who actually came in search of happiness. And when I go to Tagbilaran to renew my visa, I sit in the ICM mall, and there's a particular area where a lot of expats all gather to meet. These are all friends, and they usually have a much younger woman who is evidently their wife, and they look happy. Now, whether you or I like them, think that they're great guys, if they're Americans and you're English, you probably think they're too loud, and if you're American or let me see, I lost my way there, but if you're looking at someone who isn't quite the same as you, you may have expectations which are not being met. Well, he's not this, and he's not handsome, and that girl is too pretty, or there's all kinds of things that you expect, and you expect another person's life to meet your own expectations. Well, isn't that just a little bit crazy? Now, for me, the easiest way to look at it perhaps is looking at children. And you look at children and you can see that, well, this child is very strong-willed, probably going to come up with problems when he goes to school because he won't be able to have his own way. That child is too submissive, so he's going to get bullied. The other child is a potential athlete, so he may be earning several $1 million as a basketball player. When you make these observations, correct or otherwise, but you make those observations and you make them in a very benign way. Like you don't dislike a child because he's going to be a certain way. You observe, and if they're happy doing what they're doing, you're happy for them usually, because we think of children in this way, that nobody wants to look at a child and think badly of them. Now, that's not allowing for that nobody likes all children, but in a general sense, we can look at children and be happy if they're happy, even if they're doing something which we don't enjoy. Now, why can't we do that for any person that's out there and they're not doing exactly what we do, what we think is right? Now, one place where this comes especially into play, usually for the man that's coming out to the Philippines, is in family. In family and in whether he is accepted for his actions. And we have actually done videos on this before about how sometimes you have to say goodbye to your own family in order to start your next adventure, your next life. And coming out and marrying a younger woman of a different culture, of a different mindset, of a different look to you, is often a huge break with what you have up to that moment considered his reality. So you come out here and if you've got any sense, you won't just confine your friendships to other expats. You'll try to have a friendship, you'll try to have a relationship, you try to get the sense of family with Filipinos, and that would be, to me, would be the way to go. But as I said, when I go to Tagbilaran, I see groups that are sitting at coffee bar and they're all meeting together and they're happy. Now, I don't look at them, I don't want to, actually for me personally, I don't want to go over and join that group, but I don't envy their happiness. I don't judge their happiness and say, well, listen to them, I mean, they're doing this and they're doing that, and I don't like that, and they're too loud or too soft or too arrogant, or whatever I say, too. That's one of the worst. If, but, and too. Three of the worst words you can have. I'm not jealous of their happiness. I'm happy for them. If I see, and I've done this, I've sat in the pizza bar that's in the ICM Mall in Tagbilaran, and I saw a man who was obviously in his late 60s, and he's sitting alone, having his meal, and next to him is a new stroller. Now, what does that tell you? I looked at it and thought, there's a man who has come to this country, has found someone new, probably come from a broken marriage, because at that age most men have been married. He's probably come from, and I'm making these assumptions, but I'm making them without malice, right? I look at him, I'm glad for his happiness, because he looks contented, and he has a new stroller. So this is a man that's come along, and he's obviously fathered a child. And now, as long as you don't go into this thing of, well, yeah, but I mean, he's going to be too old to lift the child up, isn't he, when the child gets to 10 years old. Well, you can put all of these expectations on that person, and what you're missing is that here is a man that may have come from a terrible broken relationship, a terrible divorce where he's lost most of what he's loved all his life. Probably isn't, like me, he isn't accepted for his actions by his own family, and he's made a break. So for me, that's courageous. He's put behind him those people who have told him, no, you're not doing this right, we don't agree with you, we don't bless that union that you're having. It can't last, it won't be this, it won't be that. And they're doing that instead of just looking at whether the man has found happiness. Now, one time, a long time ago, I thought that I'd found someone who I could marry. But they were much younger than I was, and circumstances led us together, put us together. We found that we had a lot in common, and we planned to get married. Now, it didn't work, but at the time I spoke to my son, and he said, well, I think that marriage is till death do us part. It's not, there's no point in saying, I mean, when you're this old, she'll be that old, and of course they did the math. And he was very judgmental, and he didn't approve, and he didn't think very much of my decision to try for happiness with this woman. 2 years later, he was divorced. So when we make these judgments, we're making them, as I've always said about when you make a judgment, don't make the mistake yourself of thinking that you are point zero, the point at which all things can be judged either right or wrong. Because you're not. You're also you're in the sea of life, and you're just as likely to drown as anyone. So, as far as older men coming out here, and obviously I'm fighting my own battle here, because I'm married to a much younger woman, and can't you just be glad for their happiness? They've made a break, and they've found some measure of happiness. Now, I think that the better way to look at life is to allow other people to be what they want to be, do what they want to do, as long as they do not harm others, and live the life they want. That goes for children. If you're mothering a child, look at the unhappy children that have grown into unhappy adults because they were forced into a particular profession which suited the aspirations of the parents who want a doctor in the house or a priest. And these people that go forward and fulfill their parents' dreams are often the unhappiest of people. And actually, they are often those who are sitting there in the ICM mall in their 60s with a stroller. They've made a break, and they've come. I think I mentioned one man who messaged me quite a time ago, and he said, I realized recently that I've lived my life, my whole life, for other people. And he said, and now it's time for me. And I applauded his courage, and I said, it won't be easy, but you can do it. So that's my point there, is when you see people, not just the older man, younger woman thing, not just that, in all things where you can just not disbelieve that that can work for that person. Just allow that it's their life and they are making their own decisions about something which actually doesn't involve you anyway. I know a fair number of people here, expats, who are very happily married to younger women, and I know people who have spent their entire life doing one particular kind of job and have come out to the Philippines and now do something absolutely totally different, and they're happy. In a survey that I saw once, they interviewed very famous people who were at the peak of their career, and they asked them, are you happy with what you do? What if life were different, what would you like to do? And people who were great athletes said that they would have liked to have been a singer, and people who were famous opera singers said that they would have loved to have done something else. Somebody wanted to be a golfer, and they all had far different dreams. Even writers who write a certain kind of genre, or artists who paint a certain kind of picture. I once saw the comments of an art dealer who was the representative of a famous artist of beautiful landscapes, and he made the comment that actually what this artist wants to do is paint portraits, but everybody loves his landscapes, so he paints landscapes. So you just have to be happy for people's happiness, and that shouldn't be so hard. This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Bye for now.